our show is it's going to be unique.
You are what you do. You can say any amount of things that you want to say, but what you do is what everybody sees.
People are like, oh, I'm just going to JV it. Like, it's just JV it. Like, what the hell does that mean?
I cannot tell you how excited I am to hang out with you guys today, so thank you so much.
Well, then that end buyer could come back and say, well, I didn't fully understand that it was subject to.
That's not a thing. Like, the SEC has thought of all of these things. They've been here since 1932.
And you can do what you want with your property.
Buyers have time, they have negotiating power, they have options.
Oh my gosh, I am blown away by your inexperience, and they've been in business 20 years.
And that includes things other people put on your property, right? It's your property to be okay. Suddenly Cousin Jimmy's in a lawsuit.
A novation is replacing one contract or one obligation with another.
Out with the old, in with the new.
Yes.
Hey everybody, welcome to the show. Today we're talking about profiting from low equity properties. I'm Andy Fowler, and I'm remote today, but I'm here with Sean St. Clair, who's in our studio. If you're new to the show, make sure to like our channel. You can find us on YouTube, Facebook, and you can find us on X, formerly known as Twitter. At all of those, you can find us at the handle @InRem Podcast. That's @InRem Podcast. With that, Sean, give us a legal update.
Thank you, Andy. So my legal update today actually follows up on the last little clip on the video talking about novations. And so novations is a strategy, a disposition strategy for real estate, basically where you go and have a contract in place with the seller, and then you find a buyer who is willing to buy the property, but is wanting to maybe obtain financing or otherwise. And so then you put them in contact or connection with the seller, and they actually enter into a contract with the seller directly. And then you, as the original buyer, are paid the cancellation fee or release fee for releasing your memorandum. I don't care for that strategy. I don't like it. I've never really liked the strategy and for a disposition. Instead, my preference is to actually not do the novation, but do a short-term agreement for sale or land contract, whereby you have a 45-day, 60-day performance under a land contract. So you put an initial amount down, similar to what you would an earnest money deposit. You put that down, and then you have a final principal payment that's owed at the end of the land contract, which would be your purchase price or your purchase amount. And then you actually record that land contract or that agreement for sale. And then the seller delivers an original warranty deed to the title company or the escrow agent that's going to handle the escrow for the purchaser's performance under the agreement for sale. I like that strategy because then you control the entire transaction. You don't have to worry about any further seller cooperation whatsoever. And then you can take that agreement for sale or that land contract, and you can assign it. So you could wholesale. You basically just assign the rights under the land contract to an end buyer. Or if you have an end buyer that you identify, you can actually, at that point, execute a purchase contract with you as the land contractor, the agreement for sale purchaser, which basically means you're the owner of the property. You execute the actual purchase contract with the end buyer. So the end buyer is purchasing it from you as the seller, because under an agreement for sale or a land contract, you actually own and control the property. The only difference is that the deed or fee title is not in your name, because it remains in the original seller's name as security for your performance under the land contract. But for all intents and purposes, you are the owner of the property. So you have the full ability to sell that property. You have the ability to market that property, to list that property, to do everything, because you essentially are the owner under this land contract or agreement for sale. Then you don't need to worry about seller cooperation, getting a contract with the end buyer and the seller or anything like that. You are in full control. And there's nothing statutorily or legally in the law that prohibits a short-term land contract or agreement for sale. You can make it for that 45 or 60-day period. And there are some logistical issues that I generally like to see when in employing the strategy, such as delivering to title. You basically deliver to title that's going to handle the final, transaction that puts the warranty deed in the buyer's name. You deliver the original warranty deed, and you deliver a notice of termination or cancellation of the land contract that the escrow agent is authorized to record if the purchaser under the land contract doesn't perform. That way the seller's protected. You already have a mutual cancellation or termination sitting there with a title company that they can then, record if the purchaser doesn't perform, and then you deliver a separate escrow instructions, basically authorizing that escrow agent to record that document. So I recommend replacing novations and the novation strategy with a short-term agreement for sale or land contract. And it reduces liability. It reduces the hassles of having to have seller cooperation at any point in the transaction. And so it's something to definitely consider if you're an investor out there, is to do a short-term agreement for sale or land contract in lieu of a novation strategy.
All right. Thank you, Sean. With that, a couple of announcements. Every Tuesday at 2 p.m. Arizona time, we do the Creative Finance Collective. What is that? That's an opportunity for us as lawyers or professionals in the space of creative finance to get together and talk about all things creative finance. So if you're new to the strategy of creative finance, maybe you're trying to learn about what it is. Maybe you are involved in it. You're running into problems and deals. This is a good chance for you to come and hear professionals in the space discuss what they're seeing, laws as they're changing in different states and jurisdictions, and what we're seeing. But it's also an opportunity for you as the listener to ask questions. We're on for as long as we get questions, or for as long as an hour. So we're there until we don't get any more questions from you. So it's important for you to be there and engage. You can watch that on YouTube, Facebook, and X. So make sure to join us, ask those questions, 2 p.m. Arizona time today, every Tuesday. Also, if you have questions on today's episode, make sure to just post it in the chat. We're going to try to set aside 15 minutes in the final kind of quarter of the episode to go through any questions that there may be. So as we're talking, make sure to post those comments, questions. We will get to them. All right, so our topic today is profiting from low equity properties. We thought that was an interesting topic, and that's kind of how we pick our topics. We thought it was interesting. We'd want to learn more about it, and we think it's a good one for you to consider. And with us to discuss that topic is Kevin Choe. Kevin, thank you so much for being with us.
Thank you, guys. This is my first time actually speaking with you, Andy, and I've seen you, Sean. Like, your name is like literally all over the place in the creative financing world, especially here in Arizona, everywhere.
Oh, wow. Wow, that's so more people know us than just. I thought Sean was the only person that knew me, but that's good to hear, and we're glad to have you. So, Kevin, tell us how you got into the real estate industry generally, and then work us into how you worked your way into the strategy of low equity properties.
Yeah. So for those of you guys who don't know who I am, my name is Kevin Choe. I am a real estate investor. I had a very good start to real estate just because my background is I got into real estate when I was straight out of high school, almost. A couple of years into a couple of weeks into community college, I dropped out and went full time into real estate. And I ran into creative finance because I was very close with Pace Morby, and I was one of his first couple hundred student, and I just fell in love with it, with the idea that, okay, like, I can go buy a house that has, and that's not going to require me to put significant amount of money down. That's not going to require me to have full-time job. That's not going to require me to have all this good credit score and all that stuff. So it really attracted me, and for the last 3.5 years, I really focused my attention and effort into just strictly creative finance, right? Like, just here in the Valley. Like, I mean, that's what I'm known for. Every single deal that I do, I've never done a fix and flip. I've never have intention to doing a fix and flip, but I always, that's all I want to do is creative finance. And I think just in 2023 and I'll say in the last 18-24 months, I've really benefited a lot by utilizing the subject to method. And I think that's what we're going to talk about today, right?
Yeah. So, just to follow up on that, Kevin, the this I think you've kind of answered one of the questions that I have, but we're going to be talking about low equity properties. But is it fair to say that creative finance or subject to purchasing is kind of your go-to or preferred purchase strategy right now when it comes to low equity properties?
Right. Yeah. I would say that's probably the only strategy that I use in terms of acquiring my own rental properties. I've never
Okay,
went and got a traditional financing, and this is the only way I was able to build my portfolio.
got it. So you mentioned you got into this as kind of a student of Pace Morby's. Were you just doing conventional real estate before this as a real estate agent, or was this kind of your introduction into the industry, creative finance?
I was doing a couple of wholesale deal. I was working for this couple of flippers out of Florida, and my job was to find distressed houses. Like 50%, 60% of what the house is worth, and finding those deals, and making a couple $1,000s. And I would say I did pretty well. I found majority of my deals off of Facing Marketplace. I have probably done 10 to 20 deals just off of Facing Marketplace, and I'll bring it to those fix and flippers out of Florida. But I was like, you know what, like I feel like this is not a sustainable strategy for me. Like, I just have hard time giving the homeowner like, "Hey, your house is worth 200, but I'll give you $110,000. Would you how do you like that?" And then so many times they're like, "No, this is not what I want." And I just what really drew me to creative finance was that I have the ability to give the homeowner full pricing and negotiating the terms and saying, "You know what? Um, if you want a cash offer of 110,000, you can take it, but I can offer you up to 200,000 what your house is, full worth if you're willing to work out terms with me." And that really what attracted me. And I completely once I figured it out, I said, you know what? I'm not giving homeowner $110,000 offers anymore. I'm just gonna go and see how many full price offers I can give to these homeowners. And ever since then, I would really say my business took off because my confidence and going into these phone calls and to these seller appointments, I knew that I had a solution to provide other than just one option of cash offers.
So Kevin, now walk us through how you kind of worked your way into the niche that we're going to talk about today of low equity properties. And correct me if I'm wrong too. I'm kind of assuming that's a niche. It sounds like a niche kind of area of the real estate industry to focus on there. But what kind of drove you and led you to that niche?
Yeah, well, that I would 100% say that's a niche because that not many people are focusing on that strategy. So, the way I came up with this low equity property slash list was kind of by accident because I was doing, the moment I moved to Arizona about 2.5 years ago, and I was doing deals here in Arizona, just like working for other fix and flippers and bringing them cash opportunities. And I come across this girl, her name's Diana Hernandez, and she goes, "Hey, Kevin, I have this homeowner in Yuma, Arizona, and this homeowner just bought the house, and I offered her like $170,000 for the house, but that's the cash offer that I gave to her because we want to go in and wholesale it for $10,000 to $15,000 to a fix and flipper, but then the homeowner owes way more than what the house is what I can offer. So I know that you are the guy that knows how to do creative finance. So I hop on a phone call with Diana, me, and and both the seller. Let's just say their name is Seth and Ashley, okay, whatever their name is. And I hop on the phone call, and I'm like, "Hey, hey, Seth, hey, Ashley, what's going on here? What's the story here? You guys can't just sell this house?" And she says, "Well, I can't sell this house because I just bought this house on a VA loan 3 months ago, and I basically owe what the house is, worth. And I cannot. It's not that I don't want to take cash offer. It's just that I just can't afford to spend 40, 50, $60,000 just to sell this house. I bought this house with zero money down, and I'm on a fixed income because I work in the military, and it was and Ashley, her name, Ashley was a full-time mom, so she didn't have income. So for them, and as they were separating, they needed to sell the house, but they just couldn't sell the house. So what I presented to them was like, "Hey, looks like you have a 3.75% interest rate on this house. What do you care to make any money on this house? Like, you put zero money down and you moved in right away. You have no skin in the game." And she says, "You know what? Honestly, I'd be happy if I just walked away from the house. Don't have to worry about the mortgage payments. I don't want to rent out the house. I don't want to do that. I want to be a full-time mom." And Seth goes, "I'm getting promoted in the military." So So they just didn't want anything to do with the house. But as an investor, I couldn't do anything with it because the homeowner owes way too much. So I said, how about this? I know you're okay with just walking away from the house, but if I just came in and took over your mortgage payment and gave you like $2,500 you and to your wife, would you guys be okay with that? And they're like, yeah, as long as I don't have to, as long as I don't have any pay, as long as I don't have to, um, as long as I don't have to make monthly mortgage payments, because I'm going to have rent payments when I move when we separate. So I just don't want a mortgage payment that I have to take care of and I don't want to be a property. I don't want to be a landlord. So that was my very first deal. So it was the payment on the house was like around 1450. I don't know the exact number. It was 1450. And then that house, I still have it to this day. And we just upped the rent to 1950. Right. So we had it for about a year and a half. 1750 was a rent, and then 1850, and then as we just renewed the lease to 1950, and my payment is still the same. I don't give the homeowner any more money, and my underlying note is 3.75%, and those 3.75% are nowhere to be found. And I said, and once we close the deal, and I go to the house and I talk with Seth and Ashley, like, you know, and they love this idea that like they were just able to get out of the transaction without having to come out of pocket. And that week, I said, there's got to be more people that have just recently bought the house with either VA loan, FHA loans, and they don't know what to do with it. And, life happens that people get sick, people, divorces happen, whatever the life scenario happens, they have to move out of the house. And if you have no equity in the house, there's no way for you to sell it. And most people don't really have 40, 20, 30, $40,000 that they have available and that they're willing to cut a check for. So sometimes they just want an investor that will just come in and take over the mortgage payment. And ever since then, like I've been known as that no equity guy. And I've done just in 2023, I've done 90 sub two deals. I bought 11 of my own and I wholesale 79. Pace Morby, who bought 25 of them. Like that was my entire business model. And I'm like, oh my gosh, everyone's selling me all these deals. Matter of fact, I had a couple of homeowners that reached out to me from my Instagram and my YouTube, say, hey, I know you buy a house. I know you buy houses with no equity. Do you want to buy my house? Right? It's not, these people are not real estate investors. These are the homeowners that bought their houses and they just want to sell it. So that's been my niche. And I would say just in 2023, 90, and then we did about 40 deals so far this year, no equity deals.
So Kevin, when we talk about low equity properties, we're obviously talking about the difference between the value of the property and the amount owed.
Right.
Is that current condition or after repair value when we talk about low equity? What are you looking at? Are you looking at the current condition, or are you looking at, okay, well, if I go and fix it up, it will actually have decent equity? What are you looking at when we talk about low equity properties?
For me, my definition of low equity properties is if they were to sell the house on the market right now for, let's just say, for easy number, 300,000, and the house could be worth 310,000 after it's fixed up, but if it's a little outdated, I'll say the house is worth 280. So if they're in a position to sell it, let's just say sell it for 300 and they owe 280, that's almost a break even if they lose a little bit of money. For me, that's low equity. So I don't really look at it from what's the ARV, what's the house worth, how much work does it put in. It's if you were to put this house up on the market and the offer that you got, and the offer that you got minus the commissions, repairs, and the note, if you're walking away from less than $10,000, like that's for me, I'll consider that a low equity.
Kevin, walk us through because this sounds great. It sounds like it's been working really well for you, but with everything that works well also comes with challenges. Walk us through some of the challenges that you've run into or pain points that you've had to deal with in developing this strategy.
One of the recent challenges, and this is something that I just went through as of last week, is when you're buying houses with no equity, you're almost paying 90 to 95% of the ARV, right? And sometimes, like that's just too close on the deal. If I go and furnish the house, if I go and put some renovations to the house, that means I'm putting in a lot more, I'm into the deal for probably 105, 110% of what the house is worth. And that just restricts you on your ability to sell the house. Right. So for me, my main exit strategy was midterm rental. So we work with a lot of insurance clients. So we buy the house, low interest rate, but then we're underwater for most of the deals. So if the house doesn't perform as we anticipate, we have hard time exiting on these deals, meaning we can't sell the house, meaning I'm become the homeowner that has no equity. So I have a house on 2938 East Blue Ridge out in Gilbert. We bought that house during winter and we had it on Airbnb. It was performing really, really well. We rented it out for like $6,000 a month for the January, February, March, and April. And slow season comes and it's just sitting vacant. I'm paying like $3,500. So my partner was like, "Hey, we should seriously consider selling this house because this house is not really performing as it used to. If it will pick back up in August and September, but we have summer months and it's 117 degrees. Nobody wants to come to Arizona." So my partner and I were thinking of selling it, but I said, "You know what? Like we don't have any room to sell this." That's that. And so for me, that's probably the biggest challenge that I come into, that I run across, and as of recently. But challenge that most people run into is just with the homeowners that are not really open to doing a subject to, because they don't like the fact that the mortgage is still, that underlying note is still there, and they're somewhat at the mercy of the buyer, making the mortgage payments, although they can take the house back. They it just doesn't feel comfortable with them. So you just kind of have to let the homeowners feel comfortable that, hey, like this is a strategy that we've done multiple times. It's completely legal, but you just have to convince the seller and the agents. And I'll say that's probably the biggest challenges that I come across when doing the transactions like this.
So it sounds like your exit strategies are somewhat limited
Yeah.
on these low equity deals. Are
Right.
you ever able to wholesale them because maybe the value of the house isn't where it should be, but the cash flow makes sense? Are you ever able to? Do you ever wholesale these before closing?
Yeah, very, very. So I've done, of the 90 deals, I've wholesaled 79 of them, just because number one, I can't take down every single. If I bought 90 houses in 1 year, that would be insane. It would drive me nuts. But most of the houses I buy, that I go under contract, I actually end up selling it to people like Pace, because I wanted to, number one, I want to sell off those 3 to 4 interest rates because they're very desirable, especially in this market. And Pace has no intention of selling any houses in the near future. So even if you're underwater and you have a fixed mortgage and you know that the rent will go up, as long as it's consistently at the bare minimum breaking even, that house will eventually grow in value, and you'll get some tax benefits, and it's just cool. Like, you get to build your portfolio that way. So the exit is limited. The buyers have to the buyers have to know that, if I buy this sub 2 deal, although it's got 2%, 3%, 4%, I cannot plan to exit on this in the next 3 to 5 years.
Well, Kevin, what's interesting is it sounds like, Sean and I have talked about this a good bit, and at some point, buyers and sellers will start seeing low interest rate mortgages as not just debt, but an asset itself. And in an environment with high interest rates, right?
Yeah.
The idea that you could have a 3% fixed rate for 30 years is itself, a marketable asset. And that's sounds like one of what your exit strategy's been on some of these, is to find buyers that understand that asset, or like the fact that they can get a 3% mortgage fixed rate, and are willing to acquire that even though there's not a ton of equity.
Yeah, and every single, I don't go on seller appointments as much as I used to, but as when I go on seller appointments, sometimes the homeowners ask me, "Hey, like, why do you want to buy this house? Like, this house is worth 350,000. You're gonna pay 360,000 out the door." And I said, "Well, you gotta understand." And I said, "Hey, Mr. Seller, Mrs. Homeowner, the value of the house, the value of this deal is not in the house itself. It's in the loan that you have. You have a 3.75% interest rate, that I want to keep that for the rest of the loan. If I were to go get a traditional financing at 6.9%, my payment will be $800 more than what it would be. So like I was able to benefit by doing taking over mortgage payments, because I bought my personal like my primary residence, and I have a 3.25% on it, and it's a $600,000 house. Came with a fully furnished Airbnbs, like, and and her name's Eva, and I have a really good relationship with her. She follows me on Instagram, she watches my YouTube channel, and she goes, like, "I want to do what you're doing, and I kind of regret selling my house to you because I had a 3.25, and now it's yours." And I said, "Well, Eva, I'll go find you something else." But like, the asset itself is interest rate, and I now more and more homeowners are picking up on that and say, "You know what? Like, I have a 2.8%. Like, I went to sell an appointment in Vegas like 2 months ago, and he goes, "I have a 2.8%." And the offer that I have is I have another investor offering me $15,000. Like, can you beat it? And I'm like, well, you got to understand, I'm paying way more than full price. And he comes back and says, well, I have a 2.8%. I'm like, oh gosh, these homeowners are picking up on these.
Yeah. Well, and that's one of the things that I've said, and I know it probably drives investors like you crazy. I'm like, I've been asked, what's the biggest mistake that sellers make in subject to transactions? And my answer is not asking enough.
Yeah.
Because they don't recognize that the, interest rate has that value to it. You mentioned some tax benefits for low equity properties.
Right.
Talk to us a little bit about what, tax advantages there are out there for, buying these properties that, are low equity.
Right. So I don't know too much about taxes, personally, but as I sell a lot of these, as I wholesale more of these sub 2 deals to people like Pace, I'll often run across deals that are like, if I were to buy this house, I would lose like $100 to $200 a month on cash flow. And I ask him, because I spend good enough time with him just traveling. Hey, why do you buy these houses? Because like you're spending money to lose money at the end of the day.
Mm.
But he goes, well, Kevin, you got to look at it in the next 3 to 5, 10 years. The amount of money that I'll be able to save on taxes just by buying this $600,000 asset, and I do accelerated depreciation, it will allow me to wipe out all the income that I make from my wholesale business, my fix and flip business, and title companies, VA companies. So he's actually he may be losing $100 to $200 a month, but if he's saving $40, $50, $60,000 by taking the tax advantage of owning real estate, like he's actually effectively cash flowing a couple of $1,000s just by the tax savings. So it really opened up my eyes. I am taking advantage of the tax appreciation as of last year, because I bought 11 houses last year, and cumulatively, like, was it like 8 point? No, it wasn't 8. It was like somewhere like 2.5 to $3 million in real estate. And I'm able to take that and use depreciation to wipe out my income, because I did 79 wholesale deals, and that was a significant amount of income for me. That was the most money I ever made in 2023, just by wholesaling these deals. So I wholesale these deals, I buy some of them, and the depreciation from the rentals actually wipe out my wholesale active income. And that was like a good combination.
Right. And so you still own the asset, and, you can benefit from the appreciation at some point,
Right.
presumably, and any, cash flow that you're able to reap. But you're basically, in a lot of ways, chasing the depreciation in the short term.
Right.
You're trying to get that, tax benefit to wipe out, like you said, the income you're making in other ventures.
Right. And it's interesting because I've never been in this position. I'm 23. I never really made this much money other than in 2023. I was able to take good amount of income, and my CPA, Adam, he goes, you probably, like, if you take depreciation on only like half of your asset, like, I think you will be able to, like, you'll be able to very closely not pay any in taxes. And that was really eye opening for me, because if I didn't hold any real estate, then I would have paid significant chunk in taxes.
Kevin, given that none of this sounds conventional at all, I'm guessing you're not finding these deals on the MLS or in the conventional places. What are you doing to track down these deals or find these deals?
No, I find probably 80% of my properties that I wholesale was from the MLS, right?
Okay.
So I want to break this down, because when Seth and Ashley, when I look up their house on PropStream is a software that I use to find like literally all the information about the house. Like, I can look up your house, Sean. I can look up your house, Andy, and I can find literally every information, whether you bought it cash, who owns it, what's the interest rate you on it. It's kind of scary how much information that it's out there. When I look up their house, I saw that, like, my house before I bought it on Cherokee Street, I bought it for around 600. I bought it for around 590,000. You can look it up on Zillow, and the homeowner owes like $574,000. Like, the mortgage balance on any house in America is a public record. So if I saw that, Sean, let's just say you were selling a house for 300, I could pull up the address and see if I see that you have a house for 270,000, you have a house that has note of 270,000, and you're trying to sell for 290, 300. Like, I know that's a no equity deal, and I always just compare, right? What's the MLS amount and what's the loan balance? And as long as they're within less than 10%, like I'll consider that no equity, and I just kind of that's what I go after is all the houses that are on the market. And I just called the listing agent and said, "Hey, looks like your homeowner just bought the house. I Are you guys looking for?" And I would kind of throw them an offer that's below what their what their loan amount is, and they almost always say, "Well, the homeowner can't take that because they owe more than what your offering is." And then that's when I go and pitch the subject to saying, "Hey, I'll pay your full commission. I'll give the homeowner a little bit of money. Can I just take over the mortgage payments?" And that's just met my entire strategy for the last 18 months, and was pretty good. I had pretty good success with it.
So when you're going to pay the agent's commission, do you out of pocket pay that, or do you have like a lender or somebody that you utilize for the financing on that?
Yeah. So like when I bought my house, I paid my agent about $15,000. I paid the listing agent. Her name's Linda. I paid her 15,000. I gave the homeowner $15,000. So all in, I was into the door like $31,000 plus closing costs. And on my deal, I brought my own money because it was my primary.
Mhm.
So I'll bring my own deal, but then some of the other rentals that I have a house on Polk Street, right by the Sky Harbor Airport. The homeowner wanted 10,000, and the agent wanted 5,000. And then I'm like, this is a rental. I don't mind if it's over leveraged because it was duplex. So I brought in a lender for 25,000, and so that I brought in a private money lender, who was a close friend of mine in second lien position to cover the down payment to the seller and the agent commission and a little bit of money for furnishing. So like sometimes I'll use my own money, but sometimes I use like a second party financing.
So step one's finding them, and you like to use the MLS. Jumping off of that, you like to for properties that have been sitting on the MLS for some time, or are you just looking, hey, this meets my criteria. Doesn't matter if it's been day one, I'm going to call these folks.
Yeah, I don't discriminate whether it's been on the market for 365 days or it's the first hour of the listing. I have I have a I have a good system set up where every single time a house goes up on the market here in Maricopa County, I immediately have my acquisition manager look up the house on PropStream and say how much is left on the note, and he does a calculation. The MLS amount 300. If they owe 270, okay, he's like this qualified for low equity, and we just send them like a letter of intent saying, hey, you know what, we plan on, we give you the homeowner $5,000, we pay your full commission and take over the mortgage payment. And the best part about doing no equity for me is that these homeowners, they number one, they used a high leverage loan product, right? Like VA loan, FHA loan, or 5% down conventional loan. So they put little money down, and there's the only way for them to exit out of the house is to, number one, come out of pocket. Number two, hope and pray that the offer is high enough, or subject to, which, subject to, like I have homeowners that was like, I would never sell my house to you on subject to. My mortgage will be wiped out before I even sell it. And then like 3 or 4 months goes by, they come back to us saying, hey, is your offer still on the table? Because I haven't gotten a higher offer. So like they're kind of like, boxed into a corner, and I'm just waiting. I'm like, hey, my offer's still here.
Yeah. So another exit strategy, and this was years ago that we saw these in volume, but is the short sale, right? I
Yeah.
mean, but what people don't realize with a short sale is, number one, it takes longer to sell your property because you have to go to the bank and ask permission. But on top of going to the bank and asking permission, the lender reports that on your credit as, basically a default, an agreed to default, as well as like a disposition for less than the full value of the loan.
Right.
So that is an immediate ding on the credit,
Mhm.
and basically restricts that homeowner from obtaining any type of financing for a period of time,
Right.
generally give or take. And it's there's no set rule, but generally give or take a couple of years,
Right.
versus a subject to, you're maintaining their credit.
Yeah.
You're paying their loan, and if a buyer's doing right by the seller, which they should,
Yeah.
um, they're paying it on time. And when you have all these on-time payments and paying the loan in full, that's amazing for your credit. I mean,
Right.
that does nothing but bolster your credit.
Right.
And then there's other things that can be done as far as proof of the payments and things like that to, potentially qualify for other financing in the future. So from a credit standpoint, it probably is a homeowner's best exit strategy if they're in that position of, break even or, even underwater a little bit.
Yeah, yeah. So like my house, for example, I keep bringing this example up because it's such a good story. The homeowner was actually was operating the house as an Airbnb, and here in Airbnb in Arizona during the summer, it hurt a lot of homeowners. So which is reason why she sell. But she went 2 months without a single income, and so she was a couple months behind on her payment, and then obviously as she was behind on mortgage payments, she was behind on a few other credit card payments. So her actually credit score went down to all the way down to like I think mid to high 500s. And the moment I took over the mortgage payment, as I'm making mortgage payments on time, and mind you, I was living here, so like I would of course pay the mortgage. The homeowner's credit actually went up all the way to like I think 690 to close to 700 within 12 months. And I got a text message from her because it was I literally bought the house exactly a year ago, and she says thank you so much for paying my mortgage payment because my credit went up. So now I'm working with her I'm having her connected with one of my lenders that I work with and saying to see if she can qualify for another house. So it works for both parties. I got low interest rates. She got her credit up, and she's not buying another house. Like everyone wins.
Kevin, in this market when you're focusing on low equity and your preferred method is creative finance, is third-party financing in your mind ever work? Do you ever utilize it, or are you ever utilizing it right now, or is this just, hey, these numbers only work when from a creative finance perspective
You mean third party as like a bank?
A bank or even a,
or hard
hard
money?
money or something like that.
Um, you, so the moment, so in order, what allowed me to scale my portfolio was being able to leverage other people's money.
Mm,
And but obviously the caveat to that is you have payments that you have to make to these people, right? So like for me, my house, I use my own money, but all the
mhm,
rentals that I have, I leverage. I take over the first lien position, the bank note, and then I'll bring in a third, like my uncle to help me out with the down payment, whatever. But now you have two different payments, and if can you afford to have those two different
mm,
payments? Or can you not, right? So if like on my house, when I use my own money, like I don't technically have payments I have to make on my own on my own money. It's my own money. But if I use my uncle's money, I have to make the seller note my uncle's payment. And if that house is not going to cash flow, then I probably wouldn't do that,
mm,
right? So it's like you just don't want to over leverage yourself because at the same time you know that you're going into this deal that you can't sell the house for the next 3 to 5 years. But if you can't even cash flow in the house, like what good is the deal?
right.
Right? So I'll just be cautious of utilizing like a third party financing.
So talk to us. We've been talking about some of the challenges that you face in trying to get in these, and challenge number one's finding them. Sounds like you got a pretty good method at doing that. Boy, technology helps out a ton. Two, it's convincing them why creative finance is worth their time. Once you overcome all of those, in your estimation, what do you kind of perceive as the biggest advantages to focusing on low equity properties?
Uh, for me, the biggest advantage is I think it helps you, especially when you're beginning. It's such a quick way to get your first deal,
Mm,
right? Like these homeowners, they already expressed that they want to sell the house and that they're in a position where they're not able to sell the house. So as long as you have the right follow-up system in place and you just follow up with them respectfully and you know what you're doing with the house, whether you wholesale the deal or you keep the house, like there's the advantages like the homeowners really you're the only option for these homeowners most of the time. They don't have any other options that they're exploring. And even if they're exploring other options, they don't that's not really going to pencil out. Like you look at all these billboards like cash offers for your house, like they're not going to do a subject to. They're going to give you
mhm,
70% of what the house is worth, if that. And the homeowner owes way too much. So like right off the bat, there's very little competition.
mhm,
So I think that's the biggest advantage. And although it is getting harder, although there's a lot more people doing the subject to no equity list. I remember vividly when I was doing the no equity list. I had pulled 53 houses in Phoenix that had no equity, and when I went through it just once, I got 3 deals.
Mm.
It was like, oh my gosh, like this is like a fish in a barrel. One shot, one kill kind of thing. Like, and then I go to the second time, I get another 4 deals. And now it's like I can't get that number anymore. If I might have to go to the list like 2 or 3 times for me to get one deal. But other than that, there's still not much competition. The homeowners really need you. You are their only solution, and they're very grateful for that.
So cash flow is an important thing with low equity properties, right?
Right.
Because at the end of the day, you can't sell them, so you need to make sure that you're bringing in enough money to pay the mortgage
Right.
and any other obligations. What are some strategies that an investor would use to improve cash flow for one of these low equity properties?
Yes, one of the best ways, in my opinion, to increase the cash flow and make your deal more juicier is number one, you can't rely on long-term rental like the whole time, right? Like long-term rental is like the lowest you can get out of any rental possibilities. It's the most commonly used rental strategy. But for me, if you look at my portfolio, I have about 25 doors here in Phoenix. Some of duplexes, triplexes, quadplexes, a lot of single family houses. Like I don't have a lot of long-term rentals. I have mainly midterm rentals, meaning it's a combination. It's a hybrid of like short-term. It's in between of short-term and long-term. So like my rentals are usually 2 to 3 months at a time, and we
Mhm.
have a lot of we have full-time VAs on staff that make connections with these insurance companies and say, hey, we have a fully furnished house, 3 bedroom, 2 bath in Scottsdale on Hayden and McDowell, and this house we'll rent it to you for $4,500, right?
Mhm.
So we are able to get increased cash flow. So like my house, also great example. I moved out of my house. I live in an apartment now, but last year, October, I moved out of my house because I had a construction company that wanted to rent my 4 bedroom, 2 bath house for $27,000 for 60 days. I 27,000 for 60 days, and my long-term rental would have been 2,600.
Mm.
So I have a full-time partner. Her job is she has a team that runs the VA, and their entire job is to connect with the insurance clients. And we like every single house we rent it for usually the double what the cash flow is. So even if I get a no equity deal that's at 4.55%, and my payment is 2,700, my rental is 2,300, I can turn around and charge $4,500 and still make really good cash flow.
Yeah, so correct me if I'm wrong. So when you're referring to insurance, basically, let's say, and the reason why insurance works is because so um, they need to place their insureds somewhere
Yeah.
in the case of a catastrophe or hazard that occurs to their residence that's insured by the insurance company, right?
Right.
So, hypothetically, there's a huge flood in a property.
Hmm.
Insurance claim is placed. The property's not habitable until it's remediated.
Right.
So, and it could take 60 to 90 days to fully remediate a, significantly damaged home. Well, the insurance company under their policy has to relocate.
Right.
And so to find a decent hotel anywhere, which even then a homeowner is generally not wanting a hotel, right?
Yeah.
But to find a decent hotel, depending on the time of the year here in town, you're talking $200-300 a night.
Yeah.
Or they can find a unit like yours that would offer 2 or 3 months at 4,500. Is that kind of why you're reaching out to these insurance companies and what the thoughts are behind that?
Yes, 100%. Because most, like when a house floods, I'm using a house like flooding as an example, but there could be anything else.
Mhm.
Like if you have a 3 bedroom, 2 bath house, I imagine, 2 parents and 2 kids, like they don't want to stay at a hotel. And
Mhm.
if they're spending $200 to $300 a night at a hotel, that's $9,000. So
Mhm.
for an insurance company to place this family into a $9,000 hotel a month, but they pay half and spend and put him in my $4,500 a month house that's fully furnished. It's really very nicely done in a great neighborhood. It's no brainer.
Right.
So, but for us, it's like, oh my gosh, I was going to rent this out for 2,700. I got 4,500. I'm happy.
So on those properties though, when you lease, you don't really, and I could be wrong, but you don't fully appreciate though how long these people are going to need, the insureds are going to need to, homeowners are going to need to stay there because you don't fully know how long the work's going to take.
Right.
What's the vacancy, situation like? Is there like a month or two gap between being able to then place another family in the property, you know, is that a risk?
Yeah, that is definitely a risk because obviously construction, you never know that, you never actually know the timeline of when things will be done. But our usual rental like leasing duration is 2 to 3 months. Sometimes they extend, but we usually have a lease, and then they have an option to extend every month to month going forward until the house is done. We During the summer right now, we are experiencing a lot more vacancy. To be totally transparent, we have way more vacancy than we ever had. So, but during the winter time, what we would do is if we have a tenant that's moving out on the 10th of the month, and we have a tenant that's moving in 2 weeks later on the 24th, the 2 week vacancy, we would usually fill them up with short-term rentals.
Mm.
Right. So we very, very rarely have any vacancies, especially during winter months, because of those 2 months, those 2 weeks of vacancy between the tenants, we usually get them filled. But then during the summer, we just nobody comes here, so the 2 weeks just get vacant. So our turnaround time is about 2 to 3 weeks, and then duration is 2 to 3 months at a time. So I would say, I don't know if I were to do the math, like a month or two vacant every single month,
Yeah.
every single year. But during winter times, we kill it.
Right.
Oh my God, waste management weekend. We
Oh.
had we rented out a house, 2 bedroom, 2 bath house in Chandler for $7,500 for a week. And I'm like, oh my God, this is insane. But summer is completely different story here in Phoenix.
So Kevin, give us an idea about the risks. There's some risks that are associated with all strategies, and I'm sure to this. But when you're dealing with the low equity side of things, what in your mind are the biggest risks?
For me, because I don't buy every single house that comes across my table, we wholesale a lot of things out. Like like I said, I wholesale 25 houses to Pace last year, and Pace does a great job of obviously making the payments and things like that. But once in a while, we would wholesale deals to buyers, and obviously we get proof of funds, we get everything. We want to make sure you're an experienced buyer before we even hand off the baton to someone else that we don't really have the control over. The biggest challenge is finding buyers and making sure those people are capable of making those payments, right? And obviously we don't, we thoroughly go through the background check and making sure that they have the capacity and the cash flow from their business to pay for it, because you don't solely want to rely on the cash flow from the rent from the tenants to pay, because what if the tenants don't pay, right? So I will say that's one of the challenges that we ran into, because when you do so many volume and you're doing at least 1 to 2 deals a week, that's a lot of risk that you're handing over to your buyers. And a couple of times in 2023, there was 2 times where we had to take the properties back from the buyers that we sold it to because they weren't capable of making the payments. So and obviously we worked it out with them. We didn't go through the foreclosure process. I said, hey, you know what? Like, I just get the house back. Let me just continue on with the mortgage payments, and your 25 grand, we'll work something out. So most of my buyers are very, amicable, and they're easy to work with. But once in a while, you will get homeowners, you will get buyers that's like, you know what, I put money into this. I'm just gonna write this out as long as possible, and I'm not gonna make the payments. And that very rarely happens. Like, I had that happen once, but other than that, like, I really don't see a lot of issues with this, other than the due on sale clause, which I haven't experienced yet. But it's like just buying another house, in my opinion.
Yeah. So I one thing, and I'll offer, a strategy here to avoid that buyer situation.
Yes.
Where you can stay kind of in the middle of the
Yeah.
transaction. So there's 2 ways to kind of accomplish that. Obviously this is a high level type thing, and the details would have to be worked out, through documents and stuff, but there's 2 strategies you can employ to avoid that. So the first strategy is a land trust.
Okay.
I'm not a huge land trust person for certain types of transactions, but if you do want to stay in the middle of a transaction as, the original purchaser under a contract, and make sure that a buyer does right by the seller and performs, then you can close in a land trust and then assign the beneficial interest of the land trust to the buyer while retaining the ability to amend the land trust if the buyer doesn't perform.
Oh, okay.
You see what I'm
Yeah,
saying? Okay.
yeah.
So that keeps you in the middle, so that if the buyer doesn't perform, you just cut them out as beneficiary and take the property back over, keeping it in the land trust.
Right.
So that's one. And it also can work the same way with an LLC. So you close in the name of an LLC, single asset LLC,
Okay.
formed for solely the purpose of purchasing that property. And
Okay.
then you convey the membership interest in the LLC to the buyer and reserve for yourself basically a security or lien against the membership interest. So if the buyer doesn't perform, you can come in and take over that membership interest and kick the buyer out of the LLC and still, keep not unwind the original transaction, because the LLC would still be the buyer, and then you step back in as the owner of the LLC.
How is the security? How is it your security in the LLCs? How is that secured? Is it secured against the house?
No, it's secured against the membership interest.
Okay.
And so a membership interest is considered personal property. And because it's personal property, you have the ability to basically put a UCC lien against it.
Mm.
And then you can basically put in there provisions that allow you to basically either sell the interest, which you would end up purchasing it yourself,
Yeah.
through a credit bid. And then you can go and the security agreement would give you a power of attorney to go and change the records with the state to reflect you as the proper owner because the buyer defaulted.
Oh, wow. That is so interesting. I've
Yeah.
never heard anybody talk about this.
So that's one way to avoid that scenario
Right.
where the buyer is, not going to live up to their obligations. Because a lot of people worry about that. And, there's attorneys, who are very well known in the creative finance space that won't, assist or get involved in a wholesale of a creative finance transaction
Yeah.
for that very reason is, the seller knows the original buyer, but doesn't know the end buyer. And there's concern that end buyer doesn't perform. And then it just brings down the whole industry,
Right. Right.
So, that's the kind of the mechanism for you to stay involved and protect the seller.
Yeah. I love
So-
that. I think we're gonna we're going to have to start implementing that. Very rarely, like I said, very rarely does that actually happen. We
Right.
had it happen once, and then the other 2 times it was very, very friendly.
Mhm.
And, let's work it out. But yeah, because at the end of the day, you're the homeowner's like trusting you with their mortgage, and if they sell it to me, obviously the mortgage is always made on time, or
Mhm.
pays or whoever. But once in a while, like you just run across those one-offs, and it's like one deal can really destroy the creative financing industry.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah.
Sean, I think we have one question from a listener. Mayu, if you would post that question for us. All right. Since Subject 2 is becoming more mainstream and there are a lot of investors pitching creative finance, how do you separate your offer over someone else?
Personally, for me, I'm not a big fan of offering more money to bid over the deal. I'm always the guy that's like, you know what, I will always be the highest. I'll always be the best offer. So every single time. So I think that's a person that asked this question. Number one for me, it's I always do hard earnest money, no non-refundable, no inspection period, no appraisal contingency, like none of that. And then I also put non-assignable clause in there if I know that this deal I'm going to be buying. So but also when you say mainstream, there's really like I still, as I'm so heavily involved in the creative financing space, very rarely do I actually run into that much competition. Right, the most competition I've ever ran into in one singular deal is like I had 3 other investors bidding over me, but very rarely I go into seller appointment. Like I went to seller appointment with a friend of mine, Glenn, and the homeowner's like, "Oh, are you Kevin Choe?" Like she recognized me from Pace's YouTube channel because she was doing the research, and there's very few people that's actually doing Subject 2, like
Mhm.
that say they're doing and they're actually doing it. And it's me, Pace, and probably like 10 other people that's actually like buying and actively doing business. So there's really not much competition personally, or at least that's what I see.
Yeah.
Very, very interesting. Well, Kevin, we appreciate all the information. Tell our listeners how they can connect with you. You mentioned you got a YouTube channel, but what's the best way to reach out to you, find out more, and send you deals?
The best way to reach out to me is on Instagram. My Instagram is Kevin Choe 12, so it's KevinChoe number 1 and number 2. That's my Instagram. I respond to my DMs every single day, and then I have a YouTube channel all dedicated to creative finance. I walk through houses that I own. I underwrite deals. I post seller calls on there. I I teach people how to underwrite deals, like everything that you need to know about creative finance. Like I'm working on building my YouTube channel. So my YouTube channel is also Kevin Choe 12. YouTube.com/Kevin Choe 12. And that's the best way to reach out to me.
Awesome.
All right. Yeah, good information. And we'll go ahead and post that information as well in the description of the video so you can find Kevin. Kevin, thanks so much for being with us. Let's do this again soon.
Yeah, thank you, Andy. Thank you, Sean.
All
Thanks,
right.
Kevin. Yeah, it's been great.
Yeah. So with that, everybody, thank you for joining us. That is our show. Make sure to join us at 2 p.m. for The Collective, and we'll see you next week.
Have a good day, everyone.